Hey folks, so we're today talking once again about AB 1263. This is the bill that in the state of California is going to effectively, and you'll see why later, stop the online sale of parts pretty much across the board. There's going to be a few retailers here and there that are going to be willing to work with it, but what we're seeing already is that most of the big names are either completely pulling out of the California market or they are treating every firearm accessory or part as if it is one of these newly regulated parts. It's because the law is so complicated and complex and vague that the only safe way to go forward would be to actually assume that everything is regulated. So we're going to be reading a little guidance document, just kind of perusing through it from the CRPA, the California Rifle and Pistol Association. Some of their interpretations of what they believe certain aspects of this bill are regulating isn't quite as doom and gloom as I believe it could be, but you'll see that they often say, due to the vagueness, it's best to assume that something is regulated. So while they might not be saying it as doom and gloom as I am, it seems to be as if, unfortunately, once again, I was right with this, which sucks. Okay, now before we get into this nightmare story that is this law, I do want to say thank you to the sponsor of this channel, and it is Delete Me. Delete Me is a service that goes online, monitors your personal information, and helps make it significantly easier for you to keep your information off the internet. Chances are, if you were to Google your name and maybe just any little thing about yourself, you would find your name, your address, your spouse's or kid's name and address, all of your phone numbers, everywhere that you've worked. A surprising amount of information is just one quick Google search away on all of the front page of Google on all those white pages websites. Delete Me makes it significantly easier, saving you a lot of time and potential risk of harassment or threats from online threats that want to make their way into the real world. I've been paying for Delete Me for probably 4 years now, and they reached out to sponsor me a while back, and I was super excited because I've been paying for the service for a long time, and now I get to tell all of you about it. So check out Delete Me, use the code and the link in the description to support me. If you use the code and the link in the description, you'll save a little bit of money and it'll help me by showing Delete Me that you are interested in what I have to offer you. So this document here comes from a CRPA. This is the California Rifle and Pistol Association. This is one of their news alerts. Gives a little bit of background information on what it is, and then it has a link down here. If you click on this link, it'll open up this bulletin. If you just want to share people the basic stuff, I guess I have notifications turned on, and a man named Aaron White just subscribed right now. Don't know how to turn that off. Okay, so let's start here. So we have some of the specific changes. It talks about how the term firearm accessory is used in a variety of contexts. This intro here talks about the implementation of it. Yes, this bill was actually signed into law, and it goes into effect January 1st. And it covers things like ghost guns, firearms manufacturing devices, but then it also has a whole lot of other stuff in here. If you are in the firearm industry in any way, I recommend that you read this. If you know someone that works for a gun store, works for a gun retailer in the state of California or out of the state of California, I recommend you send them this video, or at least the link to this guidance document, because we're going to break it down. One of the important definitions that was added was firearm accessory, and firearm accessory means an attachment or device designed or adapted to be inserted to, affixed onto, or used in conjunction with the firearm that is designed, intended, or functions to increase the firearm's rate of fire or to increase the speed at which a person may reload a firearm or replace the magazine, or any attachment described in Penal Code Subdivision A of Section 30515. So Penal Code 30515 is the assault weapon ban by features in the state of California, and there is a list of specific attachments or accessories or features that can make something an assault weapon. So if it is one of those features, and we'll talk about this more as we continue down, but if it's one of those features as well as anything that can increase the rate of fire or increase the rate at which you can reload the firearm or replace the magazines. Before proceeding, it is essential to understand what items fall under the revised definition. We have reduced this definition to 4 distinct categories and provided some examples for each. The first category is designed, intended, or functioning to increase a firearm's rate of fire. Now, the CRPA's main look at this is that it's talking about the multi-burst trigger activators, like bump stocks, gat cranks, that kind of thing. So they don't actually say binary triggers here, which that's interesting for a reason to me. Anyways, so multi-burst trigger activators. Now, the problem is there's some people that debate whether or not FRTs and super safeties fit under that definition of multi-burst trigger activator. The DOJ is most certainly likely to take the opinion that a FRT or a super safety increases the rate at which you can shoot the gun. Now, technically, because we talked about this in the first time that we made a video on this, rate of fire isn't actually directly defined from my understanding. I think that this one is potentially worse. The DOJ or the CRPA seems to think that it's not that big of a deal and that most of those items are already banned anyway. So maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I would really like to be wrong. Now, the second category is items designed, intended, or functioning to increase the speed at which a person may reload a firearm or replace the magazine. So moon clips, those sorts of things for revolvers, probably. The main thing that's the problem for us in California is items designed to quickly load fixed magazines in semi-automatic firearms, such as clips, would also be affected. Other California, they put it in quotes, compliant products designed to assist in breaking apart of a firearm's action to release a fixed magazine also likely fall under this category. Careful analysis and individual consider of additional types of products may be needed, but when in doubt or otherwise unclear, it is best to assume that the product falls within the definition to avoid any liability concerns unless confirmed otherwise. So, my opinion was that a super broad opinion of what allows you to reload faster could include an extended magazine release, a California compliant fixed mag device that allows you to load the gun faster by disassembling the firearm action quicker, mag wells. Those were things that I said. Now, the CRPA is not really saying that those would be considered directly. They are not directly saying it, but they're saying that careful analysis is advised, essentially. Now, this is the big one here. This is the real one that's going to affect most people. So Penal Code 30515, the assault weapon ban based on the features in the state of California, it has a whole lot of categories of things that are considered assault weapon ban features. So some of these are going to be pretty obvious to you. You might have heard them before. Pistol style grips, stocks, folding, telescoping, or thumbhole stocks, grenade launchers, flare launchers. So that includes your 37mm grenade launcher or flare launcher, like the Spikes Tactical and whatnot. Flash suppressors, so flash hiders. Yeah, those are going to be required to have a lot of restrictions, but muzzle brakes maybe not. Forward pistol grips, threaded barrels of any kind. Don't worry, as of January 1st of 2026, all firearm barrels have to be transferred face to face. They cannot be done on the internet anyway, so they would have to go to an FFL. All types of hand grips. Now, you're probably wondering, where did they get that from? Well, because in the Penal Code definition of assault weapon for a pistol or an other, second hand grip. So that's a grip. A barrel shroud, which would include things like hand guards. So magazines of all types, you might be thinking, what about that? Like, why is that? Well, because the capability of accepting a detachable magazine outside of the trigger guard is considered a evil feature, and in some ways, magazines of certain capacities, so it's safe to assume that magazines of all type would need to be regulated in the following ways that we'll get to in a minute. Semi-automatic action components. Because semi-automatic action components are part of the prerequisites of Penal Code 30515 Section A, that's kind of where they're getting that from. So that's something that I actually had not thought about, just the general components that go into making the gun semi-auto. That was actually a takeaway that I did not initially have. So then it talks about the tools and parts kits. I'm going to have you guys just go ahead and read this one yourself. We're getting a little long in the tooth on this video, but generally it's going to be tools related to building and assembling firearms, but it was initially sort of targeted at things for building 80%ers, but because what this means exactly is not entirely clear from the language of the bill. As a result, when in doubt or otherwise unclear, it is best to assume that the product falls within the definition to avoid liability concerns. So if it's in any way marketed as working on a tool that is meant to be used to be worked upon firearms, it's probably going to need to be regulated in the following ways. So I'm not going to touch a whole lot on the civil code about the 3D printed documents and data. Might save that for a later date. Amendments to this section require that beginning January 1st of 2026, before completing the sale or delivery in California to a California resident, a firearm accessory, we talked about what that is, all of those things in those 4 categories, a firearm manufacturing machine, or a firearm barrel unattached to a firearm industry member shall do all of the following. They have to provide the purchaser with clear and conspicuous notice of the specified information that will show in right here. The receive acknowledgement from the prospective purchaser attesting to that they received and understand the notice, and they have to collect proof of identification and identity and age. So that's the main problem. So you are going to have to, for an online service, some companies are figuring it out of how to do it. I think Midway USA is working on that. They're going to have to give you a notice. You're going to have to acknowledge it, and then you're going to have to provide a copy of your identification. The problem is if it's going to be shipped to you, the ID has to have your current location and address on it. Maybe different types of identification will be allowed in conjunction with, but that's a problem. Now, this is the notice. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but this is the notice. All packages must be conspicuously labeled with signature and proof of identification of person aged 18 years of older for delivery. You're going to have to mark the packages a certain way. You're going to ensure that the shipping instructions list an address that matches the purchaser's identification, and require the purchaser upon delivery to present a courier with proof of identification and the purchaser's signature in order to receive the items. Now, the main thing that they're hearing, the CRPA is hearing, is that a lot of these common carriers don't actually have the means to facilitate that identification requirement. Now, one of the exempt from the above 3 requirements are sales or deliveries of a firearm barrel, firearm accessory, or firearm manufacturing machine to any of the following. A licensed ammunition vendor. You actually don't need to be an FFL to be one of these, which is, I don't know, it's interesting. It's something that I'm going to look into if I don't need to get a second physical, like if I don't need to get a physical location to operate as a licensed ammunition vendor. I'm gonna look into this because that's a potential workaround. The COE and FFL 03 is not, because you notice that it says a federally licensed firearms dealer, manufacturer, or importer. A curio and relic collector is not a dealer. You are not in the business of selling firearms. The main thing that I really wanted to impress upon you today was that time is running out. If you are looking for parts, if there are specific weird oddball parts that are hard to acquire, you can't just find them anywhere, not really available through distributors. If you're in the state of California and you have parts like that you're looking for, time is of the essence. You are running out of time to acquire those things. What I believe will end up happening is that gun stores are likely going to offer middleman services. So you order something online that they can't get, or at a price that is just completely outside the realm of them being able to be competitive. Ship it to a gun store, pay them a few bucks, they transfer it to you, all good. I foresee systems like that popping up. Maybe this will end up being good for the local gun stores because they'll sell more stuff. I'm not saying that this is a good bill. I'm not saying this is good, but if there's one possible benefit, it's that the typical small FFL may find a way to get more foot traffic in the store, and hopefully they use that opportunity to be ethical salespeople and be a little bit more competitive with pricing. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see how it all pans out. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace. If you use the code and the link in the description and the pinned comment, you will save a little bit of money, and it shows support to me. Delete Me knows that you are interested in it. Delete Me is a huge supporter. If you want to save a whole lot of time protecting yourself from online threats, use the code and the link in the description to support me.